Welcome all to Amir Shakur Speaks with your host, Amir Shakur. That'll be me. Oh, wow. Today we have an interesting show, to say the least, to a person who uh, has been someone who I can honestly say has been a pain in my side for quite some time. I have him on mute, y'all, so basically he can't really respond. No, listen, I definitely have a lot of admiration and appreciation for this person who has been someone who I've known for the better part of 10 years. Satish Sekar is a British author, journalist, and forensic evidence consultant known for his work in investigating miscarriages of justice. He's also the founder of the non-for-profit organization, the Fitted In Project. And I'll tell you what, he's not so bad once you just learn how to deal with him and tolerate him and, put up with a lot of the idiosyncrasies of Mr. Shakur. How do you like that intro, huh?
Could have been worse.
I told him if he didn't act right when he came on this segment, I was going to follow him around for the next week and do my British Paul McCartney Liverpool accent. And he
Oh,
loved
is
it.
that what it was?
Oh yeah, he loves it when I do that accent.
No, that is not a British accent, let alone a Liverpudlian accent.
Well, you know what? That's what you would be getting. No, listen. I appreciate you coming on the show today, and it's good to hear from you, old friend. We haven't really been together and talked in a while. A while, just on a face to face. I think the last time I actually saw you was when you came to Chicago, and we had a decent time that several years back. So I'm definitely looking forward to our segment today.
Me
All
too.
right. So without further ado, and let's. I just want to give you the proper introduction, and let's talk a little bit about you and your background and who you are. So let's do that. So as I explained to the community, is that you're a British author, journalist, and forensic evidence consultant known for investigating miscarriages of justice. You're also the founder of the Fitted In Project. Some key achievements in investigative journalism. You're specialized in the investigation of wrongful convictions since for the better part of 30, close to 40 years. The work that you've done has appeared in major publications like The Guardian and The Independent, very well renowned and world renowned media organizations, as well as television documentaries such as the Paranorma and Trial of Error. High profile cases that you've been involved in, the Carter
Sorry, you
Five.
mean Panorama?
Panorama, yeah, that's what I meant. Did I say that incorrectly? Thank you for
Yeah.
correcting me. So, Panorama, folks, I apologize. And, Shatish is very good at trying to correct me. So, yeah, just for purposes of
That's a long
clarification,
task.
it is Panorama. It is Panorama and Trial and Error, which this is this is definitely an experiment of trial and error. he's been he's been involved in several renowned cases, including the Carter Five, which we'll talk a little bit about that, which is the Lynette White murder. Shakur, Shatisha spent decades investigating this case, which led to the exoneration of innocent men and became the first vindication case of DNA in the UK and Britain. So it's a huge accomplishment, and that's how we've gotten together as far as I know you. And I think it started with the George Clooney project, the project which I was working on, which was a major exoneration case, and that led to our conversation and our communication possibly the better part of over a decade ago. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, that's about right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, and I'd like for you to explain a little bit about. I'm going to pull up the Carter Five, Beyond the Shadow of a Doubt. This is a special edition a fresh edition of Shatisha's book, and it's available on Amazon, and it includes matters that as we said, this is the work.
Sorry, could I just stop you a second? If people want to get this book, it's better to try and get it through the publisher, which is Waterside Press, as
Okay.
that's where Amazon would have to get it from anyway.
Okay.
So you might as well cut them out and go directly to the publisher.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do something here real quick. Now, explain a little bit about the Carter Five investigation and what it was and what it meant to wrongful convictions and exonerations in the UK.
Well, there was a documentary about it broadcast recently on ITV in Britain, but also it was done by CBS Reality quite a while ago. And what happened with this particular case was it was a grotesque and obvious miscarriage of justice. There was absolutely no credible evidence that 5 men were involved in this murder. In fact, there was only evidence that one person was, and the scientific evidence never fitted any of these 5 men. It was very, very obvious, therefore, that it wasn't them.
Mhm.
But once the wheels of justice start turning in the wrong direction, it gathers speed, and it becomes very, very, very difficult to own up to this at a time when it could make the biggest impact and difference before it leads to wrongful convictions. This particular case, it did lead to wrongful convictions and a bizarre verdict because the evidence that 3 were responsible and 2 were not was actually unlawful in terms of the law says you are not allowed to use the testimony of an accomplice against anyone but that particular person. And that's the police interviews. If they give evidence to that effect, it's a different matter. But the police interviews, they're not allowed to use in that way. And the jury very clearly did, because that's the only thing that can explain the verdicts. And it's actually very clear where it comes from. But it should have been very, very, very obvious. It's kind of like with Occam's razor, and the matter of facts being the simplest explanation is often the correct one. And in this particular case, it was very, very simple. Once the scientific evidence was saying there is absolutely no evidence that ties these men to the flat and to the victim during the crime, it's patently obvious they had nothing to do with it. And this was a case where there was forensic evidence, scientific evidence in the flat. It implicated somebody else. The problem was, didn't know who that person was for a long, long time.
Mhm.
And the DNA testing systems at the time when this happened in 1988 weren't sophisticated enough to be able to tell you the information you needed to know. It required some excellent policing and some fantastic use of the forensic science, the advances in DNA testing, and our national DNA database to find the correct perpetrator and bring him to justice. This was the first time in the DNA age in Britain that a miscarriage of justice had been resolved by finding the real perpetrator. And one of the important things with my work is it's not just about this one case. This is what people tend to get wrong. And essentially, they think I'm only interested in this one case. I'm not. This case is one that opens doors for others. And it is astonishing, absolutely astonishing, that people haven't looked at this case, at how it was solved, and tried to decide, is it possible that it could be used, the methods used to solve it could be used in my case. And now there are very many different techniques that could be applied in different cases where this could happen. There's another one that they're looking at again.
Can I stop you? Can I
Oh,
interrupt you? Not to be rude, but I just want to editorialize a little bit,
mhm.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So, if you're just joining us, Satish Sekar is one of the most renowned United Kingdom or UK experts when it comes to miscarriages of justice in this case had huge implications in not just the UK, but even on a global and international level. And based upon his 30-year quest for justice, with this particular case, the Carter Five, I mean, it led to exoneration of innocent people. And this case and Satish's work showed how extreme miscarriages of justice can destroy families, divide communities, and undermine confidence in the criminal justice system. Something that we have to understand in the United States. And as an associate of mine, long term, he's really emphasized, especially in American cases, how we can look at the paradigm of this particular case and we can do things like apply it to our criminal justice system with vindication, with exonerations and chain of evidence, and how these things can be changed, and we don't have to accept detectives' investigations or court judgments as status quo. But if we look a little bit further under the microscope, we can a lot of times overturn these different cases if we're willing to do the diligence and do the work. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. And if you're just joining, please feel free to open up in the chat room. And thank you for being here with us. And if you have any questions, feel free to come into the chat. And if you are going to look at this at a future point, just share and like the post. Please feel free to proceed. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, like I was saying, these methods involve the use of investigative methods combined with forensic sciences, plural. And it is how you integrate these sciences with the investigative process that will give you the best chance to establish what actually happened. People tend to think it's all about DNA, 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 and DNA. But they don't ask the question, how do you know where to look? How were they solving crimes before the advent of DNA? Well, part of the way they were doing this is they knew where to look for foreign blood. And it was about would the perpetrator in a stabbing murder, for example, be likely to have cut themselves? That's the first question you ask. And if the answer to that is yes, and usually it is, the more stabbing there are, the more likely the perpetrator's hand would have slipped down the blade from the handle onto the blade, thereby cutting themselves. And the stabbing motion would result in throwing blood backwards, what's called cast-off blood. So investigators and people who understood blood distribution patterns knew exactly where to look for blood in the flat without having to test it to start with, to be likely to be the perpetrator's blood. And that's how you separate it from the blood of the victim before you even start your analysis. Now, it would be much, much more discriminating to use DNA tests. So once you find the blood that fits that particular pattern, you would be able to identify this. One thing that was interesting and important in the Lynette White case, well, actually more than one thing, but they were able to establish the exit route from the scene of the crime to the street of the murderer through bloodstains. This foreign blood. It was the killer touched various things on his way out of the flat because it was dark.
Let me stop you, and I just want to editorialize. I apologize. So let's explain for everyone who's listening and joining who Lynette White is specifically. The person in the sadistic killing of Lynette White, who she was, and how she falls into the Cardiff situation.
Lynette was a sex worker, and I don't like using that and saying that about her, other than it was subsequently shown to to have been a major reason for her death. That is not to say her sex work is responsible. It isn't. It's not to say sex work is responsible. It isn't. The choice of committing that crime was made solely by the killer, Jeffrey Gaffor. He is the person who sought out a sex worker. He is the person who took a knife to the scene of the attack, and he is the person who used this knife on her several times. The responsibility for this crime rests solely with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important that we make that point very, very clear. There will be no victim blaming about this. It wasn't Lynette White's responsibility what happened to her. It was entirely that man's choice.
Mm-hmm.
And he, therefore, is completely responsible. What happens later is that he has committed this murder, but the police cannot find him. And it's not actually their fault they can't find him, because he had characteristics that were very, very, very unusual for a killer, in that somebody who has killed, especially in the brutal fashion of this crime, is likely to have committed similar crimes or built up to this over a long period of time.
So
This man didn't have anything,
I,
not
I,
no kind of criminal record and no kind of psychiatric history at all. So you can understand why he went completely under the criminal justice system and police's radar at that time. It
let me
was
ask
not
you this too.
possible to
When you're
find him
right,
at that time. It
let,
needed the DNA, the advances in the DNA testing system to be able to find him.
let me editorialize too in the midst of our conversation. And I'm not trying to be rude. I know you have a lot of wealth of knowledge. So Lynette was murdered in Cardiff, Wales, and for those who don't know where Cardiff, Wales is, obviously the Cardiff is in the UK. In that particular region, the South Wales police issued a photographic image of the blood stain. So the person who you described, what was his name again? Who was
His
seen?
name was Jeffrey Gaffor.
Jeffrey Gaffor was seen in the proximity at the time of the murder, but the police were unable
But
to
that's
do
just it. He wasn't.
okay,
The photo fit that you are referring to
right.
wasn't him. It is actually based on a sighting several hours after the murder was committed.
And this is
It had
Lynette.
nothing to do with it. It is the
Okay,
biggest red herring in this case, but
understand.
they still go back to it and still try to reconcile it, claiming that this is a photo fit of Gaffor. It's not.
I see.
If you look at the timing, it's not possible.
I wish I had a copy of that photo fit. So, can you explain to me about this particular graphic here and what? And we know that this is Lynette White, but can you
Yeah.
just address this graphic?
Well, you can see in the background the flat where the murder happened, and you can see different photographs of her.
Right.
That is, Lynette. That is what she looked like. But the memory of her is based on a couple of photographs. Actually, not that one, but not the ones you got there. But there are photographs of her, and she was only 20 years old. What happened to her should not have been allowed. And once it had happened, the investigation should have had the courage to be honest about it and essentially say, we're very, very, very sorry, but we can't solve this. We, at this moment in time, eventually, when advances in forensic sciences occur, we will come back to this all the time. We will come back to it until there is a chance to solve it. If they had done that, at least an appalling miscarriage of justice would not have happened, and the public and Lynette's family would not have been cheated. They were completely and utterly cheated because they were assured they were safe. They weren't. It's sheer luck that Gafford did not go and commit further crimes of this nature. He very easily could have done. The public should not be reassured that they are safe, which wrongful convictions do, and they're actually even more dangerous because they do that.
Did
They essentially say to the public, it's okay, we caught the nasty person, you're safe again.
Let me ask you some questions in the midst of our conversation so I can editorialize for the people, just to give a certain level of understanding. So in the midst of this whole trial, and according to record, and let me know if this has changed. This was the longest trial in UK history. It was the longest. Is it still that, or
No,
has
it's not anymore, but it
okay?
was
How many
the
days?
longest
How many
murder
days?
trial.
How many days did it go on? I'm sorry.
I believe it went on 197 days.
Were you there for
No,
portions of?
I wasn't there for the trial at all.
I see.
I got involved in this case in February 1991. That's 3 months or so after the convictions of the Cardiff Three.
Okay.
And basically, I've been involved ever since.
So you're almost, to me, you would almost be like a modern day Sherlock Holmes, almost to a greater or lesser degree, right?
No, I wouldn't
You
say
don't
that.
you don't put yourself in that light. Okay, well,
No.
just for the point of illustration, I mean,
Mm.
similarly suited type of work, maybe not as intense, maybe not as dramatic, but like the
Mm.
gist of it, we'll let that stand. I'm gonna say that. So the new day DNA technology, which when this trial was going on, DNA wasn't even a factor in forensics around
It
the
was
world.
becoming a factor, but
Yes,
the system at the time was, well, you'd say it's Stone Age by today's standards.
right, right. So it wasn't the level that it is now.
Nowhere
So
near. It
okay.
was still a level higher than what was there before,
Mhm.
but it was nowhere near what it is now.
So basically, above it all, your approach was to take a hard look at scientific evidence and facts to vindicate this particular case. Is that correct? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it was, there were not a number of issues which was telling you something has gone seriously wrong in this particular case. It wasn't the only one where things have gone wrong, but
Right.
it was a rare one in that so much went wrong in the one case.
Okay.
The DNA and the forensic science was the, like, became the icing on the cake. It was the strongest argument as to why you could say they didn't do it, because it required an incredible suspension of disbelief to be able to claim the Cardiff Five were responsible when all of the scientific evidence was very, very strongly suggesting, or credible at least, was suggesting it wasn't them.
Can
And
we?
there were circumstances where they had credible scientific evidence that was leading in a different direction. It should have been allowed to speak as it intended. It was basically saying, this is not the five men. These five men are not responsible for the murder of Lynette White. A one man acting on his own is responsible. In 1988, you still knew that.
Mhm.
And it was absolutely proven by the time that this case came to trial. It was known that it wasn't, that there was absolutely no credible scientific evidence tying any of these men to this crime in circumstances where there very clearly would have been.
So, via subsequent evidence in the trial, in the aftermath, what would you say, as far as the level of importance that the Cardiff Five, innocent beyond any doubt? I mean, what would you say as far as your investigation, the scientific facts, and the vindication of this case? meant to the future of vindication cases in the criminal justice system in the UK? What would you, if you were to approximate it or sum it up?
Well, what it did was open the door, or it should have done. It basically meant that people should have been looking at how this case was solved and whether that applied in other cases.
Right.
That never really happened. But a measure of how important the case was is immediately, and when I say immediately, I mean like within a couple of days, the South Wales police announced they were beginning an investigation into what went wrong. They apologised to the Cardiff Five and to Lynette's family and began an investigation. What went wrong with this is they should never have been allowed to conduct that investigation. They were investigating themselves.
So were they in over their heads at this point?
It doesn't matter whether they were in over their heads. It didn't make any sense because let's say for argument's sake, they didn't do anything wrong and they conduct an investigation. They find that they didn't do anything wrong. Who's going to believe it?
Right.
It's never going to have the credibility. And if they do an investigation and they find that others were, that people were responsible for bad policing, it'll open a can of worms the like of which had never been seen before. Because you would then have to look at every case these people were involved with. And the only way you could limit the damage and force the lid back onto this can of worms is by saying, in this one case alone, they have slipped below acceptable standards. They have done things which are unacceptable in a civilized society, and those are the words of the judge, not mine.
Let's editorialize for the people who are just joining.
Mhm.
If you're just joining us, I had the privilege and the honor to be interviewing a friend of mine. A friend on some days, not every day. Most days. Satish Sekar. He's definitely a brilliant, world-renowned expert on forensic evidence and miscarriages of justice. I think both would be qualifications that when we speak about your name or your name is spoke, I think these things are both mentioned in duality. So he's joining us, and let's just go to a couple of questions that we had from the audience who are watching. So this is one question: was blood type a factor?
It was. The blood grouping established that the killer had a rare combination of blood groups.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people that were rightly eliminated on this basis, and there were a couple of people who had this rare blood group, but combination of blood groups. But it applied to something like, I believe, 1 in 3,800 people. If you do the maths, as we call it, that would mean you would be talking about roughly 16,000 people in Britain at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So quite obviously you didn't have all 16,000 people involved in this. And as you knew it was male, you can halve that. So you're looking at roughly 8,000 people that or 8,000 men, who have this rare combination of blood groups. And it's only one of those men. What the police and forensic scientists did was they claimed that they had the misfortune, I call it misfortune, of finding out that a woman who they believed was an eyewitness, she wasn't, they believed she was, possessed this combination of blood groups. This is where the sensible and simple answer should have come into play. Angela Pasila wasn't a male, she was a woman, and therefore she did not have the Y chromosome. They needed to explain this because the blood they had found contained Y chromosome. So the obvious indication is this was male blood.
Did this come? I'm sorry. Let me ask you these questions. Did it come out during the trial, or was this
Oh yeah.
actually included in the initial investigation as well?
Oh, this all came out during the trial. But their explanation of this is that they claimed one of the accused, the late Yusuf Abdullahi, punched her in the face, causing the inside of her mouth to bleed, and the blood from her cut lip dripped down onto his cut hand, mixed intimately, and then fell onto a section of her jeans, just a couple of spots.
So the Cardiff Five.
Well, sorry, I need to actually explain this.
Okay.
If you believe that that happened, go and buy a lottery ticket or try and buy the nearest bridge to you, because that is how likely this is.
Understood. So the Cardiff Five is what Satish is discussing. It's a landmark case in the United Kingdom, and it basically was a landmark case because it changed the trajectory of evidence and the way that cases are presented. How long did the Cardiff Five, and the Cardiff Five, again, for the folks who are just joining, basically were wrongly accused, five gentlemen who were wrongly accused in the murder of Lynette White. Lynette White, and we have to use the description which you don't like, but was a sex worker, and she was murdered. And basically in the UK, I mean, this was big national news. And how long were they incarcerated for?
They were incarcerated for a total of 16 years. That's not 16 years each, that is
Okay.
16 years in total. Two of them were acquitted after 2 years
Okay.
on remand. The other three were convicted and were released after 4 years. That they were released on appeal. But some of the things you have to be aware of with this case is that this was a gratuitously brutal, sexually motivated murder.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells you certain things, so you can eliminate accordingly. The evidence in this case very clearly indicated it wasn't these five men. They should have been released very, very quickly with an apology. That didn't happen.
What was the? I'm sorry. Let me editorialize, and I'm going to ask you some questions. So if I do,
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Can I just say,
yes.
It's very, very, very important that we don't just talk about the Cardiff Five case. There are several others that I want to come on to, because they are also very, very important cases on different areas of law and forensic science. And
Okay.
I think we should be talking about this as well. Otherwise, it ends up just being about the Cardiff Five, which I would
So
prefer.
what we can do is, I want to go into international relations as well for the next 30 minutes, if you don't mind. But I definitely want to post some questions as far as the questions that are out there, and then we can talk about some of the other cases that you've been involved in, and we can end on that, because I think it's very important. And
Well,
to
can
your
I
point,
suggest that what we do is stick to the cases on this particular one, and we'll do international relations another time, because it needs to be given the time and respect that it deserves.
well, I'll tell you what, if we can just do one topic on international relations, I think it would be great.
Okay.
And then we'll come back. So I'll tell you what, let's just do that now. Let's go to some of the questions, then we'll go to international relations, and then I'll let you approximate the Carter Five, and then we'll go to, I just want to talk a little bit about our conversation on the Israeli front with Hamas and the Palestinian authorities. I think, and then we can come back and we can close out with just your level of experience with all of your other cases. I think it's very important because, you know, our combined knowledge is not just about miscarriages of justice and exonerations, but your global travel around the world has also involved international relations and learning about communities abroad. And there's a huge spectrum. So we probably can do at least two more segments. But let's get some questions while we're at it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so and I'll let you answer these questions. So this is another question. You can answer that. So that confused the case, and that female blood was on the scene. So what she's saying is, okay, no.
The point was, I mean, obviously there was female blood, but that was the victim's blood. There wasn't Angela Poseida's blood. The DNA later proves this. If you recall, I was saying quite a lot and consistently, it was committed by one man, and that man was acting on his own. It had nothing to do with females.
Was this is another question. Clothing fibers were a factor from footprints or shoes. You mentioned that.
There were footprints or shoe prints, and there was blood on the clothes, on her jeans, the victim's jeans, also on the sock. There was traces of blood, and this is what's called foreign blood, and the foreign blood was the blood of the killer.
Okay.
It essentially proved what the killer's blood groupings were, and that was later done with they did DNA tests on it. They got a DNA profile. They tested other blood-stained items, and they got the same DNA profile from that. These were things that hadn't been tested before, and they even managed to look at crime scene photos and determine that, through the methods I'd been describing earlier, that one drop of blood was likely to have been shed by the killer and dripped down the wall to where the wall meets the skirting board. It was then painted over. And what happened, this in July of 1988, it was painted over. The murder was in February. What happened was they realized this from the photographs. So they scraped the paint gently off the wall and the skirting board, and they found blood under it, which they DNA tested, and it was the same DNA profile. So the reason this was so important is it means it was absolutely impossible for that blood to have been planted, because you'd have to know whose blood you were planting. You'd have to have known Jeffrey Gathor was a credible suspect in order to have planted his blood. They didn't even know of his existence at that time. Yeah, he didn't have a criminal record. He didn't have psychiatric record or anything that indicated he was capable of having committed this crime. So how is it possible to frame this person when you don't even know of his existence?
So if you're just joining us, we are talking with Satish Sekar. He is a globally or internationally renowned, I should say. Well, globally. I mean, you've been, as long as I've known you, you've been in many, many areas of the world, and you've dealt with miscarriages of justice. Not only have you dealt with that, but, there's also a chain of evidence. I mean, there's several things that we've talked about. The reason why I want to go into international relations and then come back real quick for the next 30 minutes that we're together is because I think that it's important to highlight the global work that you've done in our acknowledgement of the international relations, especially in a time like now. So hopefully you don't, we won't lose focus of, your chain of work. But I did want to ask you about Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu, who, for those who don't know, is the Israeli politician and diplomat who is serving as the Prime Minister of Israel since 2022. But he's also held that position at least two other times, from 1996 to 1999, and from 2009 to 2024. Netanyahu is known as Israel's current longest-serving prime minister. So the question that I wanted to ask you is, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has gone on the defensive after the International Criminal Court's stunning move to accuse him of international crimes, and speaking publicly Netanyahu claimed that the ICC's actions are politically motivated and reveal a hidden agenda against Israel since the arrest warrant of 2024. May I, before you answer or comment, and we'll just conquer this particular topic, but I want to go to a video just to illustrate our case, the case against Netanyahu. So if you don't mind, and then
Go ahead.
we'll come back. Bear with me, please.
Charges of Israeli war crimes surfaced in the international media. The ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, that's the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, he said he planned to come to Israel to see things for himself. Before he came, he praised Israel's independent judicial system that investigates allegations of war crimes on its own. But on the day of his planned arrival in Israel, Khan suddenly canceled his visit. And that same day, he issued a shocking request for illegitimate arrest warrants charging me, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Israel's Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, as war criminals. This opens the door for false charges against the brave soldiers of Israel, the United States, and other democracies who fight the terrorists that wish to destroy Western civilization. We were absolutely dumbfounded. We didn't know. What happened to make Khan suddenly change his mind? What made him cancel his visit to Israel to personally check the facts? Only months later did we learn the real reason for the sudden cancellation. It turns out that a few days before Khan's planned visit, a female member of his staff accused him of rape and sexual assault. Khan feared that his career would be in shambles. It would end in disgrace. After all, his younger brother, a former British MP, was imprisoned in Britain for sexual assault. Khan thought quickly. He hatched a plan. He would divert attention from the charges against him by charging Israel and me with false war crimes accusations. And the plan is simple. Scapegoat Israel, rally the anti-Israel mob behind him, and thereby escape justice. Since then, another woman has come forward with the same accusations against Khan. Now, Khan has since been suspended, but his preposterous arrest warrants and his patently false charges against Israel have not been removed. They should be removed, and removed immediately, for justice and for truth to prevail. Israel has let in more than 2 million tons of aid into Gaza. That's 1 ton of aid per person. And by the way, Hamas stole much of it. And Israel has sent millions of text and phone messages to Palestinian civilians, urging them to get out of harm's way. Hamas shoots these civilians when they try to leave, and they do so in order to use the civilian population as human shields. That's a war crime. These arrest warrants and false charges against Israel are a travesty of justice. And that's why President Trump and Secretary Rubio have issued sanctions on Karim Khan and the other corrupt ICC officials for their malign activities. Thank you, America, for holding the ICC accountable. Because if Israel is prevented from fighting terrorism, no democracy is safe.
Okay, so let's address this, because let's say, for instance, if what the prime minister his allegations are correct, how does that resolve the murders of innocent women in Gaza? How does that resolve the unjust killings of Palestinian and even Israeli locals who, this, for many, they believe, although it was started by Hamas in a lot of ways, but then if you go back to the prior incident of last October, correct me at the date, but the October incident was their 9/11,
7th.
October 7th, you said. Was it
Yeah.
7th? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so my thing is that Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has gone on the defensive, but he is not without, in a lot of folks' minds, a lot of watchers' minds, he is not without condemnation for crimes of starvation, crimes against the nationals, even Israeli nationals, even the Israeli Jewish population who, Many say that, they've been intentionally discriminated against, arrested, mistreated,
Yeah.
intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population right in Israel. What do you believe about this crimes of humanity against Bibi Netanyahu? Do you believe it's justified or not?
Absolutely, I believe it's justified. If you look at what has been going on in Gaza and the West Bank over the last 2 years, I would actually say you need to look at what's been happening in Palestine for the last 77 years. It is absolutely clear that the Palestinian people have been victimized and brutalized left, right, and center for the whole duration of this time. It is not their fault. What happened to the Jewish people during World War II is an absolute disgrace, a crime against humanity. It's one of the most despicable things that ever happened in the history of humanity. But what the Israelis are doing is just as bad. And in some ways, it's even worse, because if ever a people should know better what it means to be the victim of systematic evil genocide. Not that genocide isn't evil, it obviously is evil, but a genocide that is targeting a particular race of people for political gain, which is exactly what happened to the Jewish people. For them to do that or it to be done in their name. And it is very interesting. You find a lot of Jewish people who say not in their name and mean it. You have several Holocaust survivors who are absolutely disgusted by what is being done to the Palestinian people. If there is nothing wrong with what they are doing in that area, let journalists in. Let's see the evidence. It is conspicuous by its absence that they will not allow independent journalists. They target and murder Palestinian journalists indiscriminately, almost. It's astonishing that they have the technology to target individuals, pinpoint accuracy, and yet it seems to be journalists who are being targeted and various people that they need to negotiate with. Because if you were ever serious about peaceful negotiations, you have to find somebody who has credibility with the Palestinian people to negotiate with. If you look at the negotiations, the so-called peace negotiations, the Palestinians are being excluded from it. How can you possibly have a peace process that doesn't involve Palestinian people just as much as the Jewish people? Even if you believe in the two-state solution, you have to convince the Palestinians that they will be treated fairly in order for it to happen. And what I'm building up to with this is you have somebody who has great credibility within the Palestinian community, and they systematically will not negotiate with him. And the reason they won't negotiate with him is because of his credibility and because he is in an Israeli jail and may well have been framed to be put there as well. Certainly, the trial process that put him in jail is not credible. I'm talking about Marwan Barghouti.
I will say that not only has Prime Minister Netanyahu been charged with crimes against humanity, and for him to say that Constable Khan was the primary person leveling the accusations against him and a derailment of Israel on purpose, it's, for me, it's just a stretch of the imagination, to say the least. But I do want to go and pull another reference, if you don't mind, and then we'll get back to miscarriages of justice.
Let's also say something clearly. If Khan is responsible and guilty of the sexual misconduct that he has been accused of, prosecute him. Simply prosecute him. don't need to hide from this. You don't need to basically say that is the reason for it. If it was the reason for the prosecution, why is the ICC continuing with it?
Right, right. And why is it that when, even with the United Nations, so our President Trump, who's another person who's received condemnation for bribery and charges of fraud and breach of trust in the American community, it seems like you have two pieces of a pot. But I wanted to illustrate.
Let me just add to this. It's also interesting and important to remember Netanyahu was facing his own criminal accusations at the time.
In February 2018, the Israeli police recommended that Netanyahu be charged with corruption. So, these things are in some.
He was actually charged.
Well, some have said that the reason why this war is being propagated to the level it has is as a deflection away from his personal charges. But again, we can't prove that. But what I do want to say is that the combination of the world is right now is against Netanyahu, and I just wanted to go ahead and
we can't prove that. But what is the difference between that and what Netanyahu was trying to do over Khan?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's the same. But again, these are unsubstantiated allegations. But what we do know for a fact is we do know that the world is watching, and the combination of the world right now is against Netanyahu. Personally, let's say I want to show, to highlight that point, I just want to show Netanyahu in his last attempt to speak at the UN and in the global walkout of the luminaries from the United Nations, a body which I was actually a part of. And I will say that, this is the most pronounced stage protest in UN history that the United Nations has seen. So let's play that.
Please, order in the hall.
The walkouts.
Please, order in the hall. Please, order in the hall.
I mean, the hall was, for the most part, the hall was clear with
Please, order in the hall.
25% remaining. So, what do you believe? Let me, I don't think we need to show all of it. We just wanted to highlight the point of the mass walkouts. So what do you believe? How do you believe this will end up? I mean, right now there's a question of peace deal. And we've seen it time and time again throughout the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, whereas there might be a temporary peace, but then, in a short time frame, there's the fighting, the conflict begins again, and this has been going on for the better part of a quarter of a century. Do you believe that they will be lasting peace according to the Trump luminaries, and they finally brokered a ceasefire peace deal through the U.S. as part of the deal?
Not with this peace plan. It excludes the Palestinians. It's an absolute travesty.
Tell us what your suggestion is. And we do see that at least the 20, before you answer that, I'm sorry, I do want to notate that at least the 20 living Israeli hostages in exchange for the Palestinian prisoners has happened according to sources on the ground, and that Hamas operatives have reportedly returned parts of Gaza from the Israeli forces that have been withdrawn. So on the outside of it, it looks like there is a resemblance of a peace deal, but that doesn't mean that there will be lasting change, and there always will be consistent challenges to the authorities. So I'm sorry, go right ahead.
All right. Well, the fact that they tried to impose an unelected, undemocratic figure, if he's not wanted, he should be wanted, war criminal Tony Blair as the de facto leader of Gaza is an outrage.
Wait a minute.
How on earth can
was
you
that
call
put? I'm
that
sorry. Was that
peace
put into
plan?
place? I didn't think that was official. Has that
No,
been made?
that was part of what they were trying to do. That was part of their peace plan. That they wanted to bring, Blair in as pretty much the supremo of Gaza.
So
He's
it would
not
be a watered down.
accountable.
It would
He's
be a
not
watered.
elected. He's not wanted.
He's not even a
What has he
Palestinian.
ever said impartially on behalf of the Palestinian people? He has to have credibility with both sides. He certainly doesn't have any credibility with the Palestinians or even the Arabs in that area. He is an absolute joke to be imposed as a figure to try and unite a peace deal around. There is no way that if they were serious about peace, they would have even bothered to suggest Blair, because you know perfectly well Palestinians are not going to accept him. And this whole peace plan has been thought up without consultation with Palestinians. It is being imposed. You cannot impose a peace plan because as many Israelis themselves have said, even back in the days of the foundation of the State of Israel, they were basically saying the Palestinian people, what they were doing in fighting back is exactly what they themselves would have done if somebody came and took their homes and their land from them. When people sort of say you can't expect Israel to give up their land and their homes, that's exactly what was done to the Palestinian people. It's not acceptable.
What do you say about Hamas and the intentions of Hamas and this whole structure and being locked into this security vacuum? I mean, they seem to be the force of that the IDF and Netanyahu and the Israelis are dealing with as the authority now, and no mention of the Palestinian authorities, but more or less the deal is being brokered through Hamas. What do you say about that?
How did Hamas survive as long as they did? Where did they get their money from? Where did they get their support from? Look it up and you will find that for a long time, Israel supported Hamas, because that was their way to undermine the Palestinian Authority. And they did so. So they basically played a role in Hamas's conduct and what Hamas subsequently became. Hamas has said several times that they wanted to negotiate, they wanted to have peace, and there have been a number of times when they were close to getting somewhere in negotiations and their leaders were assassinated. If you really wanted peace with Hamas, you could have had it. But I don't think they do want peace. They don't want peace. And Hamas is a distraction. It isn't about Hamas. It is about the Palestinian people. Netanyahu and his supporters, especially Smotrich and others, are openly saying they want a greater Israel. It's not going to stop with Palestine. It is going to continue with several other Arab countries around Israel. Greater Israel is not an option. It is not acceptable, and there is no way you can have a peace plan that appeases and acknowledges what Israel has done and accepts it and glorifies it. It is not acceptable. It is one of the worst crimes against humanity that has been committed. And for Israel, for Jewish people to be doing that or having it done in their name, it's unconscionable.
Well, it's highly problematic, and for many it's unethical. So let me ask you another question, and the last question, and then we'll go to comments, and then we'll get back to miscarriages of justice. So we'll go to the comments after this. But how do you believe that this would end up? And my question to you is, what would you say to not only the Jewish authorities who are on the ground, but what would you say to the Jewish locals who basically, I mean, honestly, and you can correct me if you feel differently, but it's almost seeming like they are victims of a propaganda campaign when it comes to their national sovereignty, the likes of which we never have seen. For the same reason you see the Jewish control even in America, and the folks who believe that we have to side with the Zionists for historical and biblical reasons, and there's nothing else that ties us to them except that. What do you say to those type of people, like even the American evangelist movement, who regardless of Israel, whether wrong, better, indifferent, they will side with Israel, even the neocons of America? What do you say to these people?
I say you're wrong. Anti-Semitism is not another term for anti-Jewish racism. Does it include it? Yes, it does. No, Jewish people are Semites as well. At least a lot of them are. But so are many Arabs. So if you are going to talk about anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism includes discrimination against Arabs who are Semites. And guess who that includes? Palestinians. So to accuse Palestinians of being anti-Semitic is saying they are against themselves.
Or to accuse anyone who questions the Israeli authorities in their quest in what they're doing, not just in Gaza, but around the world, and to accuse anyone who is opposite of your mission as anti-Semitic is just wrong.
Yes, it is.
And we see that as the rule rather than the exception, and it shouldn't be. So here's some questions.
There's no excuse for anti-Semitism, but there's no excuse for discrimination of any kind. It needs to stop. And it should not be weaponized in the way that it has been. It is being used to silence people who want to criticize what is going on in Israel and the complicity of other nations in support, or the leadership of other nations in supporting a genocide. If this had been Rwanda or any other genocide, apart from being committed by Israel, would it have been allowed the pass, i.e. the support of it? Essentially saying, oh, it's okay, it's targeted at Hamas, this is all Hamas's fault, Hamas brought all this on the Palestinian people. No, they didn't. Even if you say Hamas is responsible totally and exclusively for what happened on October 7th, it does not in any way justify the targeting of Palestinian people who are not Hamas. They have targeted hospitals. They have targeted journalists. How are they Hamas? It is always said, when they actually get caught out and they hit a civilian, that civilian isn't a civilian. He or she's a Hamas supporter. They're members of Hamas. If that doesn't happen, it's an accident. If that isn't accepted, it's we will investigate, and if anybody is responsible, we will hold them responsible. How many times has anyone been held responsible for this? Of all the deaths of Palestinian people in this conflict in the last 2 years, how many have resulted in prosecutions of Israelis?
Well, there is nothing wrong with the Jewish nationalists establishing a Jewish homeland, which they already have. But,
there is, if that homeland has been taken from other people.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. And in taking that, not only do you persecute the locals and the nationals, but in you achieving active self-determination, you are ostracizing to to the point of exterminating these ethnic nationalists who basically have a right as much as you do to this land. So how do you believe, I guess we'll go to the questions after this. Don't answer that question. I want you to think about it, and then we'll get questions, and then we'll get back to miscarriages of justice and on that note. But how the question will be, how do you believe that this will end? And so Beth wants to know.
Sorry, to answer that question, which I've just seen, who other than Blair?
Right.
Literally anyone.
Yes. And let's say if this is about the Palestinian question, why not, to show camaraderie and show fundamental fairness, why not get someone from the Palestinian population, one of their leaders, to be a moderator? Who is, why not? It doesn't, it to me, it smacks of...
You have to have a moderator who has credibility with both sides.
Exactly.
And when you're asking, who if not Blair, that is presupposing Blair has any credibility with both sides. He doesn't. He has credibility with Israel because he supports Israel. He does not have credibility with the Palestinians. And as such, he's not an impartial moderator. If you want an impartial moderator, like maybe the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Well, to your point, Blair is considered awful as far as historically, but prior to that, he was considered a hero, even in the UK.
No, he wasn't.
What was the term? Tell us. No, before you even say that, tell us what the term was with Blair, because even during the prior to the Obama administration, or the beginnings of it, he was considered a national hero.
No, he might have been seen as a national hero by you, but he wasn't by us.
Okay, so that's what we know. What do you know?
He was popular because he got into power pretty much the same way as Keir Starmer did. Not because they offered something wonderful, but because they weren't the Tories. At that particular point in time, that was how it was perceived. You simply were not going to elect the Conservative government again.
And by the way, I'm sorry, just tell people who the Tories are for illustration points.
The Conservative Party,
it's the right-wing party. It would be the component of the Republican Party in America and the UK. The Tories. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. The thing about Blair, he might have once been popular and almost had a legacy, but the invasion of Iraq ruined it. And that's not because we love Saddam Hussein. We don't. We never did. But Blair siding over weapons of mass destruction, which it's now turned out Saddam Hussein did not have, has destroyed any legacy he might have had. Nobody trusts him. Nobody wants him. The fact that he is basically being imposed, if you think Blair is the impartial moderator, let the Palestinians accept him. Let them give him a vote and say, do you accept Tony Blair as an impartial moderator? Yes or no? That's the only question you need to ask. The answer will be a resounding no from the Palestinians.
So, allegedly responsible for war, back to Bibi Netanyahu, allegedly responsible for war and crimes of starvation as a method of warfare. Children perished in this latest offensive.
I'm sorry, let me just add, Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister, is basically doing the same thing. He's criminalizing dissent. Why? What is he afraid of? If his cause is so righteous, why is he unable to convince ordinary people? Why does he have to threaten them with imprisonment for carrying a placard saying, I support Palestine action? How on earth can you call that terrorism? That is beyond pathetic. If another regime who we don't particularly like had done that to its citizens, and it wasn't Palestine, it was a country that our current government dislikes, they would not only not be being prosecuted for it, they would be being told, you are wonderful people, keep it up. Can we help? How? What do you need?
Satish, approximately 1.8 million to 2 million Palestinians live in Israel as citizens, even the ones who have recently been displaced out of Gaza, which makes up about 20% of Israel's population. The population includes Muslims, Christians, and the Druze who identify as Palestinian or who have close ties to the Palestinian nationals. So my question to you, and I guess the last question is, what happens to them, and how do you, with a peace deal or a lack of a peace deal, what happens to them? Because we do know that Gaza has, for the most part, been leveled. The Gaza Strip has been leveled to a greater or lesser degree. And I think some of it was intentionally by the IDF and the Israel leadership. I think that was a move to make it uninhabitable, to move the population out.
Yeah.
So what happens in the near?
Well, the Israeli plan is to force them out as refugees into other countries. That is what they want. And the behavior of Israel's allies in permitting and effectively condoning this genocide is designed to achieve that end. And that will basically mean that the original plans of a two-state solution will be destroyed once and for all. Their aim is essentially Israel has a right to exist, Palestinians and Palestine do not.
So if I were someone who were a betting man, we are both saying, and without having the crystal ball to forecast the future, we're both saying that this peace deal will not work. It will quickly dissolve, as most of them have historically.
Yeah.
But, again, what happens to the Palestinians who were living in the territory? What do we believe? Obviously, they can't inhabit Gaza right now, and it probably won't be inhabitable for any time in the foreseeable future.
You have to give them as much rights as you possibly can and give them as much support as you possibly can. And you have to take away the support from Netanyahu and his ilk in order, his cabinet, his ilk, his people, basically, and force them to the negotiations and to responsibility. If Netanyahu gets away with this, nobody will be safe. Because another tin pot dictator, and I'm not going to apologize for calling him that, is going to do what he did. If Bibi Netanyahu can get away with it, why can't I?
I will say the same thing you said, just in case we get any pushback from the Zionists, because, anybody who critiques who has a platform and who critiques Israel, especially from a Zionist standpoint, gets called out. So I'm gonna agree with you. But let's say the last thing is, will history vindicate Bibi Netanyahu, or will it vindicate the Palestinians?
History will not vindicate Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a war criminal. What he is doing in allowing a genocide and facilitating that genocide is a war crime. It is a crime against humanity. History cannot vindicate him. Might take some time before he is held accountable for it, but he will not be vindicated.
And lastly, all they would have to do is to talk to the generals on the ground and some of the locals to show that Bibi Netanyahu is allegedly responsible for war crimes starving the Palestinians as methods of warfare and intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population. So these crimes cannot go, even if right now they may be sidetracked. I believe that the ICC, the International Criminal Courts, will have their way. And once Donald Trump is out of office and the next president gets in office, he won't even have the international protection that he enjoys right now. So I would probably say that if he doesn't go into exile or go into hiding, then he will be picked up through The Hague and tried for crimes against humanity. That's what I will predict. So let's get back to you. Thank you for addressing that, and let's get back to you. How about that? So I'm going to be quiet because I know that you are the global, or you are the renowned expert on exoneration cases, and to talk about, whatever you want to talk about for the next 10 minutes, and have your way. Have at it.
Well,
5 to 10 minutes, I'm sorry.
I actually wanted to talk about other cases a lot more, because I don't think that what we have been talking about just now is going to make sufficient difference. It's my personal opinion that I've expressed, and I'm not going to apologize for it because it's an opinion I hold, and I stand by it. I'm not going to change my opinion because it basically is a massive injustice. The way the Palestinian people have effectively been held responsible for the atrocities that were committed against Jewish people in the Second World War, despite not being the ones who did it, is scandalous. Where else? You are having war criminals who are held responsible for what happened. It was a European created problem, but they're not taking responsibility for it. They have been responsible for what happened in that area for a century or more even, but they are not taking responsibility. If you want to talk about self-defense of Israel, what about self-defense of the Palestinians? They're the ones who need self-defense more. But to go back to the issues of miscarriages of justice, there is another case that has recently been reopened in a way, in terms of their new forensic techniques have been announced that are going to be used in this other case, which is another one I've been involved with for the best part of 30 years. It's the 30th anniversary of that particular crime this weekend. And it was a horrible crime. It was an arson which took the lives of a young mother and her 2 infant children. The evidence in that particular case was a travesty. It is another case that is very, very, very simple. The trial took 4.5 months, and it boils down to this: was the petrol used in the fire leaded or unleaded? There is actually no evidence to support the contention that the petrol used in the fire was leaded. There is evidence that one of the 3 convicted women bought leaded petrol. She allegedly gave that leaded petrol to her niece, who then allegedly used it to set fire to this house, and that fire killed these people. According to the prosecution case, there was a maximum of 15 minutes, actually less, when the prosecution presented its case. A measure of how utterly absurd this particular case is that she now has to get the petrol. She doesn't have it. That's the whole point of being able to prove that it was unleaded, because the evidence is suggesting it's unleaded. And that you don't have to take my word for this. An American expert, fire expert, John Lentini, looked into this case for a podcast called Annette Hewins. Well, it's called Wrongly Convicted, the Annette Hewins Story. And it was made by an American broadcaster by the name of Wayne Derrick and his wife, Amy Derrick. They did a fantastic podcast which included exposure of this particular point. And Lentini is the expert who basically makes it clear this man does not have an axe to grind. He's not pro-prosecution or pro-defense, certainly not in a British case. He's got no interest apart from what the forensic science says. And he is saying it was likely unleaded petrol. The reason being there is absolutely no trace whatsoever of any of the chemical components of leaded petrol in circumstances where there should have been. Again, it involved a grossly unscientific test. A scientist takes a sample of his lab coat. If you sort of look at your jacket, it's actually thinner than that. He puts leaded petrol on it and burns it. It is consumed in this test. He then says, well, you wouldn't have detected whether it was leaded or petrol or unleaded petrol. What a load of absolute nonsense. It was a carpet. It was a sample of carpet which smelled of petrol, which means the petrol soaked in and it remained because it had constituents that were detected. And the boiling point of those two constituents, toluene and the xylenes, is lower than the boiling point of tetraethyl lead, the leaded component. And that basically means the temperature that the petrol reached in that carpet sample wasn't higher than the boiling point of tetraethyl lead, which was not detected. So that's essentially saying this is unleaded petrol. So now you have a serious problem, because now this woman, who is one of the three, the one who allegedly set the fire, not only has to go from the party nearby to the scene of the crime, commit the crime, go back home, change her clothes, and then go back to this party, so-called, that was going on inside of 15 minutes. She now has to go to a garage and get some leaded petrol. Some unleaded petrol. Sorry, let me finish. This is important. This is very, very important, because the timings, the prosecution's own timings, mean that the distance she had to cover and the pace she had to run for 6,000 meters plus is faster than the world record pace of Usain Bolt's 100 meters.
Okay, so let me do this. I think that we have to do a follow-up on, because what I would like to do is I think we have to show people and illustrate like your other cases and your whole level of work, because it's so, not only is it complex for the average person, but it's even from folks who are industry, it's complex for them. So what I would like to do, and this is an idea that I had, I think that we were actually at one point discussing starting our international journal. I think that we should do it through this medium, and I think it should be the Liberty Report with you and I once a month. If you want to do it more frequently than that, we can, but I think that it's easy, it's time consuming for us to get together an hour and a half once a week. Once a month, or on a bi-monthly basis, to talk about these things and to really illustrate and talk about your line of work, because I didn't even get into Africa, and I really wanted to talk about Africa as well. But I think that if we do the Liberty Journal Report with you and I hosting it, I think it would be the start of something that's pretty interesting. What do you think? And intriguing. Would you be interested in that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Well, let's do that. And that way, I can pull up your illustrations. Let's do this. We'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll end our live stream, because I think there are a couple of people. So I supported my son while he earned a culinary degree. So Beth was saying that she's definitely interested, and she has been she's pretty much been engaged, and she appreciates hearing from you, is what she said in the chat. I think you can see the chat as well. So I do want to say that for those who are just joining us, Satish is a London, England national, but his work is widely renowned, and he's widely traveled as a journalist worldwide. And we still have a lot of things, a lot of projects that we have in between us, like the awards that we've talked about, and maybe we can discuss those the next time as well. And your books have been published internationally as well. The Fit It In project, within the last few minutes that we have together, can you discuss the Fit It In project and how people can find you? And you could even talk a little bit about, the sports if you want to throw that in there. But can you please explain the Fit It In project?
Well, it was set up to highlight areas of injustice in particular that didn't get the coverage that they should have got. We haven't even talked about another of the great injustices of this Lynette White case, which is the real murderer got a tariff, which in Britain the tariff is the minimum that must be served before a person can apply for release on parole. This person got a lower tariff than two of the Cardiff Three for the same crime. Let me just pause a minute while you think about that. They actually gave the real murderer more lenient treatment than the innocent people for the same crime. And they try to say this is a victim-centric criminal justice system. Tell me how the victims were served well by that. They also were not given the opportunity to address the parole board on how they felt about it, whether they felt safe. No victim of the miscarriage of justice was allowed to speak at that. That's scandalous. We have another couple of cases, many of them, which boil down to medical evidence, and it's not being collected. They're basically, people are being accused of attack. There is one case where a young man has been accused of domestic violence, and he's actually the victim. But they didn't bother getting the medical evidence, the proper medical evidence.
What's the name of that case?
It's still ongoing, so that's why I'm not saying the name of it.
Okay.
I'll tell you off record later.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
I would like to talk to him and see if he minds his name being used before I actually say his name. But I do know that
you
this
can
is
also use this.
What I will say, however, is that particular young man lost his brother to a racist murder.
Wow, that's so interesting. It's tragic as well. It sounds pretty tragic.
Now, there's another case I'm dealing with.
Okay.
Let me just explain this one, because it's mind-boggling.
We'll end on that note. We'll go right.
This other one that I'm dealing with, and have been for over 30 years. A young man was racially abused and attacked with two of his black friends. And the CPS and police decided that it would be a good idea to prosecute.
CPS is what? I'm sorry, explain so people know.
Crown Prosecution Service.
Okay.
Decided to prosecute him and his two friends and 4 white people who helped them against a group of 15 attackers, and decided to let the system just take care of itself. The end result is he got jailed for defending himself from a racist attack. And you didn't even know why, because his friends were not. So you look at this and say, what's the difference? Well, the difference, it later emerges, is an alleged incident of headbanging. There was no medical evidence to support this headbanging whatsoever. So what does our wonderful Criminal Cases Review Commission do? It commissions a pathologist who says he hasn't seen enough evidence. The end result is a little bit later, this pathologist is so discredited, he is kicked off the Home Office Register of Forensic Pathologists. You would think, with such a lack of credibility, that they would actually say, oops, we better get somebody else to look at this. Not only do they not do that, they didn't even tell him that this guy had been discredited. Now that case, again, is still ongoing.
Okay.
That's 30 years.
I was going to ask,
this man is still fighting his case. It's scandalous.
Are you
and the similar one that I mentioned, the fire one,
okay.
The reason I'm coming back to it is it's actually very, very simple. The issues of this case are like the Cardiff 5. It's a very, very simple case. The forensic science demonstrates there's no way the Cardiff 5 could have been responsible.
Right.
The same thing applies in this Merthyr case. It wasn't possible. Once you show that the petrol used in the fire was unleaded, and you show that the petrol these women had access to is leaded, it doesn't matter that they had petrol. It wasn't the petrol used in the fire.
I want to stop you. I want to stop you right there, because we know that we will have a lot of questions and so on and so forth. So so we can stop the chain. So for those who will watch the stream, watch this live stream, this broadcast, Satish has written several books that document his investigations and to shed light on systematic failures in the justice system, both locally in the UK where he's at, but even from an international standpoint. And his books include the Carter 3 and the Carter 3 and the Lynette White Inquiry, the Carter 5, Innocent Beyond Any Doubt, and several other books. And where do people find information on you if they want to look you up and patronize you? I think you mentioned that there's a new website which you're using for your books. Can you let people know, please?
Yeah, the website is www.fittedin.org.
Okay.
That's where you'll find the articles, and you should be able to leave comments and things like that if you want to directly contact me. I'd rather not advertise my contact details, but Amir has them. So if people want to contact me, just let him know, he'll let me know, and I will get in touch.
And here is the Fitted In website. So if you guys, let me post that properly, and that way we won't have any questions. It's actually www.fittedin.
Well, you can have questions. If people want to ask questions, they can.
Well,
if we've got time. I don't know what time we've got.
Yeah, no, actually we don't. But I definitely wanted to just go ahead and because I definitely want to start the Liberty Report going into, let's pick a day where we'll start our collaborative report. And I think it's the perfect segue into doing that. So if you guys are just joining, please feel free to share the post and know that we're going to continue on this great information, this wealth of information, not just from a national level, but international. And we still have to talk about Africa because it's being really placed prominently, and especially with our idiot of a president, Donald Trump, and how he's downplaying Africa. So here is the website for the Fitted In project. It's fittedin.org.
Can I ask Beth McBride, You're saying so it was unfair to the guy. Which guy? What in particular are you asking?
She was speaking about that one of the recent cases. Which case were you speaking about, Beth? Can you clarify? And while we're waiting, well, you know what'll happen. What we can do is if she does have any more questions, she can reach out to me. She's definitely a supporter of the show, and she's a social justice advocate in her own right. So she knows how to reach me, and then I will share that information, and then I can share that with you if you like. That way we can pretty much keep the information going. Also, she did say, she'd love to hear from you. She'd love to hear from you more on broadcast. Hey Beth, why do you want to punish yourself like that? Hold on 1 second. She responded. She said the victim on the case of 30 years. Do you know which case that is she was referring to?
No, because unfortunately,
a few of yours have 30-year tenures.
Yeah.
I think she meant the case with the petroleum, the gasoline case. I believe she was referring to that.
Right. That case is happened in Merthyr Tydfil, and it's the three women who were, the victims' names were Diane Jones, and her daughters were Sarah Jane and Shauna. And the three women who were wrongly convicted are Annette Hewins, who is sadly deceased, and Donna Clark is the one who allegedly set the fire, and Denise Sullivan was convicted of perverting the course of justice and perjury. And that was basically, there's a lot more to it to explain the thing, but my whole point is it's very, very simple. It was made complicated because that's what they wanted to do. There's no reason this trial should have lasted 4.5 months. It is actually a very simple case. And it's one of these where as soon as you argue with the evidence that the petrol couldn't possibly have been petrol used in the fire, it should have ended the case. Because like I said, what you're basically saying is Donna Clark has to be the greatest athlete who ever lived. She's better than Usain Bolt. Not just over 100 meters. She can run a pace faster than Usain Bolt did at 100 meters over more than 6,000 meters.
Don't let the Jamaican population hear you say that. They will definitely protest you, sir.
I hope they do, because it's so utterly ridiculous that people should be protesting about it. I've actually spoken to some Kenyan athletes about it, and I've got video of them talking about how grateful they are that they never had to face her, the great Donna Clark, in a race. I'll be posting about that possibly tonight even.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Let's stay in contact, and let's announce. We'll announce ahead of time when our next broadcast will be, and we're gonna call it. Or have we decided on that? It will be the Liberty and Freedom Report with you and I. Is that what we decided on?
I'm not sure.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, but we'll announce that, and then give me 1 second while I pull up my my stream. I seem to have did something with it. But I will say I want to thank you for being a part of this particular broadcast, and very interesting information. And just a disclaimer for this Zionist, this Jewish Palestinian question. We'll keep watching that, and we hope for the best. We hope for peace, and we hope that would be the ultimate outcome. But we still have to keep hope alive until that actually happens. So, we're not opposed to it.
If you are talking about that self-defense case, that was 30 years as well. The person who was, in my eyes, wrongly convicted His name is Brian Moore.
All right. So going back, Satish, we have a lot of work to do. We'll have to roll up our sleeves in the course of the next few weeks and months. And I look forward to being a comrade with you. And we have worked together for the better part of 10 years. And just for those, my last thing is, so Satish really wants to write about other things. And he has a sports destination point that he focuses on as well. We'll get into those things as well. But, his specialties are miscarriages of justice, forensic science, vindication, the importance and the benefits of it to the criminal justice system around the world. So, these are the primary things that we'll discuss, but we'll also discuss international relations because he is very well traveled. And I taught him everything that he knows, everyone. So just keep that in mind as well.
No, I forgot everything you tried to teach me.
Hey, listen, thank you for your really seriously, thank you for your level of work. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and I look forward to working with you on the Liberty and Freedom reports. And if you guys want to get a hold of Satish, please feel free to reach out to me at amirshakurspeaks@gmail.com. And he's also on Facebook, by the way, so you can pull him up on Facebook. And also, like I showed you, the fitted.org, the Fitted In Project. So here's your last comment. Thank you for being a guest. You're welcome to join again. So that was from Pal. So thank you, Pal. Thank you for being a guest as well. You guys, listen, you know how we do. You know how we're going to continue doing, and we won't stop with the great information, the pertinent information that makes a difference. So we appreciate y'all. If you share the stream, like the stream, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and look out for the Liberty, what is it? Is it the Liberty, Freedom, and Justice report? We'll figure it out. I think Liberty, Freedom, and Justice sounds great. We just made it up. How about that? We'll take a vote on it later. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you send a link to this?
I'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good one now. Thank you.
Okay.
You guys have a good one. Take care now.
Okay, thanks.